My name is Anika Singh, 30 years old, and if you listen closely, you can still hear the echo of that laughter. Not the kind of laughter people share in joy, but the cruel, sharp, poisonous kind. The kind that slices straight through a woman's dignity. It happened inside Jaipur Family Court, courtroom number 4. A place where truth is supposed to stand taller than lies. Yet, on that morning, I stood alone on one side of the room, while 3 people who once claimed to be my family sat together like a polished army ready to crush me. My husband, Raghav Singh, leaned back in his chair, smirking like he'd already won the war. His mistress, Sanjana, dressed in a bright red suit, twirled a pen between her fingers, like she was already signing papers to take my place. And my mother-in-law, Mrs. Meera Singh, the queen of cruelty, wrapped in a designer shawl, laughed so loudly the clerk at the back of the courtroom looked up in shock. Your Honor, Raghav spoke loudly. This woman deserves nothing, absolutely nothing. After today, she walks out with empty hands. Sanjana whispered, empty hands and an empty life. Poor thing. My mother-in-law added, she was never good enough for our family. Every word fell on me like burning coal. But none of them knew, inside my brown leather handbag, beneath my folded dupatta, lay a black file. A file containing documents, screenshots, voice recordings, and signatures. Proof that could rip apart their perfect facade, ruin their reputations, shatter their bank accounts, and flip this courtroom upside down. A file that could turn their laughter into screams for mercy. If you want to know how a quiet, humiliated Indian wife stood up inside a courtroom and destroyed a cheating husband, his arrogant mistress, and his manipulative mother all at once, stay with me till the end. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, which city in India are you listening from right now? Your support gives me strength to share stories that many women never get to tell. If you had met Raghav Singh on our wedding day, you would have sworn he was every Indian girl's dream. He stood there in his cream sherwani, smiling at me as though I was the center of his world. People whispered, Anika is lucky. Raghav is such a good man. He will keep her happy for life. And I, foolish, hopeful, naive, I believed every word. Marriage, for me, meant partnership. For him, I would later learn, it meant possession. The first few months were beautiful on the surface. Late night kulfi drives, movie nights, him bringing flowers to my office in Jaipur where I worked as a marketing executive. Why don't you quit your job? He asked one evening, stirring sugar into his chai. You don't need to work. I earn well. You should relax, stay home, and enjoy life. Let me take care of everything. It sounded sweet, caring, loving, but beneath that, softness was a seed I didn't yet recognize. The seed of control. I laughed it off. Raghav, I love my job. Why would I quit? He smiled. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of disappointment, something sharper than love. Okay, as you wish, he said. But his tone told me nothing was really okay. It began subtly. If I worked late, he'd say, why must you come home so late? A wife should be home before her husband. If I wore a bright lipstick, he'd say, too loud, simpler looks prettier. If I planned a weekend trip with my college friends, he'd say, married women don't behave like carefree girls. Little comments, little cuts, little prisons built brick by brick. And I didn't notice when I stopped wearing bright lipstick, when I started avoiding staying late, when I cancelled plans with friends, because I didn't want to upset him. Love can be the softest rope that tightens slowly around your neck. The final push came 6 months after our wedding. One morning, he placed a resignation letter on my breakfast plate. Just sign it, Anika. Why do you need to work outside when you can manage the home? My mother also thinks it's better this way. I felt something twist inside me. Raghav, if you discussed my career with your mother before discussing it with me, he didn't even look guilty. Of course, she knows what's best for us. But somehow, us never included me. I don't know what hurt more, him asking or me actually signing the paper. That night, as I packed away my office ID card, I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. I told myself, it's fine, this is marriage. Compromise is normal. But a small voice inside whispered, no, Anika, this is the first door closing. And I had no idea how many more doors would shut behind it. Before we move to the next part, comment below. Have you ever compromised something important for someone you loved, only to realize later it was a mistake? Your stories help other women feel seen. If anyone had asked me back then, Anika, are you happy? I would have smiled and said yes. Because sometimes you don't realize the cage is closing until the last latch snaps shut. After I quit my job, the change was slow, soft at first, almost invisible, like dust settling on furniture, until one day you notice it has covered everything. Raghav took over the bank accounts. At first, he said it casually. Why should you worry about bills? I'll handle all the finances. But suddenly, every rupee I spent needed an explanation. Every grocery bill had to be checked. Every auto rickshaw ride questioned. He handed me 6,000 a month for all personal expenses. Manage properly, he'd say, as if I were a child learning how to count. One day, I bought a slightly better shampoo, 80 more than the usual one. He held the bill up and asked, was this necessary? Necessary. What a strange word to judge a woman's life by. I started choosing the cheapest vegetables, the smallest milk packets, telling myself it was normal. Meanwhile, he bought new shirts every week, branded ones. He joined an expensive gym. He upgraded his phone twice in 1 year. But my 80 shampoo? That was unnecessary. Then came the weekly inspections. Every Sunday, his mother arrived like a judge entering the courtroom. She would walk around the house with sharp eyes. Anika, the chapati is too dry. Anika, this kurta doesn't suit you. You look plain. Anika, women in our family keep the house spotless. Why is the balcony dusty? And Raghav? He would sit on the sofa, sipping chai, nodding at each criticism, as if it was scripture. I tried harder, cooked better, cleaned more, dressed the way they wanted. But the truth, nothing I did was ever enough. The walls of the home I once loved began to feel tighter, smaller, colder. I kept telling myself, this is marriage, you just need to adjust. That word adjust has broken more Indian women than heartbreak ever has. Then, one evening, something changed. Raghav came home late, smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. It was floral, expensive, a scent I would never wear. I tried to ignore it. But the next week, I saw it again and again. A new fragrance, a new shirt I didn't buy, a new excuse, work meeting, traffic, client dinner. The lies slipped out of him so smoothly. I almost admired how effortlessly he told them. Almost, and while I didn't know it fully yet, the golden cage I was living in, the cage I once mistook for love, was about to reveal the cracks hidden in its walls. Before we move on, Comment below if you've ever ignored the first warning sign in a relationship, only to realize later that it was the beginning of something much bigger. Your voice may help another woman recognize hers. If the cracks in my marriage were invisible before, Sanjana was the first gust of wind that made those cracks widen. I remember the day clearly. Raghav came home wearing a new shirt. Something stylish, expensive, the kind of shirt that doesn't come from a sale rack. I didn't buy this, I said softly. He didn't look at me. Office gift, he replied quickly, too quickly. Over the next few days, the smell of a new perfume began clinging to his clothes. Sweet, floral, luxurious. A scent I had never owned, never worn. And then came the name. Anika, this is Sanjana. Raghav said casually one evening, scrolling through his phone. She just joined my team. Very talented, very modern. That word modern has destroyed more marriages than infidelity ever has. I tried to brush it off. New colleague, big deal. Jaipur offices hire dozens of people every year. But slowly, Sanjana's name began appearing in every conversation. We had a client meeting. Sanjana was there. Sanjana thinks this design is better. Sanjana recommended this café. I wasn't jealous yet, but I was alert. A woman knows when another woman has stepped into her territory. Not physically, but emotionally. One evening, Raghav's phone lit up on the table. A message reached home. Thank you for the coffee. S. My heart didn't break. It cracked quietly, like glass under slow pressure. When I asked him, he snapped. Why are you checking my phone? Sanjana is just a friend. Don't be insecure. Insecure. The word men use when they're guilty, but want the woman to shut up. But the real slap came from someone else. My mother-in-law, she visited the next morning and said, almost proudly, you know that girl Sanjana from Raghav's office? Very nice girl, well-spoken, good family, much more suitable for our status. Suitable? As if marriage were a business acquisition. I laughed weakly. Mamiji, what are you saying? She looked straight into my eyes, her smile ice cold. I'm just saying, if Raghav had met a girl like her before, things might have been different. And just like that, the truth settled on my skin like dust. Sanjana was not just a colleague. She was the replacement they were preparing. Still, I wanted proof. Painful proof. The kind that leaves no room for excuses. Something in my heart whispered, follow him, just once. See the truth with your own eyes. Before we move on, tell me, have you ever felt someone quietly taking your place while you were still standing right there? Share in the comments. Your story may help someone else recognize theirs. There is a moment in every woman's life when her instincts become louder than her fears. Mine came on a Tuesday morning. Raghav stood near the mirror, adjusting his shirt. The same shirt I knew Sanjana liked, because I once saw her compliment it in a photo on social media. I have a client meeting today, he said, avoiding my eyes. I'll be home late. Something in his tone was too polished, too rehearsed, like a bad actor delivering a well-practiced lie. And for the first time, instead of ignoring the feeling in my chest, I decided to follow it. After he left, I threw on a simple kurti, grabbed my bag, and took an auto rickshaw, keeping enough distance so he wouldn't notice. My hands were shaking the entire ride. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find, but because I already knew the truth and I couldn't pretend anymore. Raghav's bike stopped outside Café Blue Leaf. the most expensive cafe in that part of Jaipur, a place he always said was too pricey for us. But apparently not too pricey. For him and another woman, I watched from inside the auto as he stepped inside. After a few minutes, she arrived. Sanjana, hair perfectly straightened, wearing a lavender blouse and jeans that probably cost half my monthly allowance. She walked in with the confidence of someone who believes the world is already hers. And maybe, in her mind, Raghav was part of that world. When she reached the table, Raghav stood up. He smiled. Not the tired, indifferent smile he gave me at home, but a warm, eager one. A smile I hadn't seen in months. They sat close, too close. Their heads leaned in, their fingers brushed. Her laughter filled the cafe. And then, the moment that killed whatever innocence was left in me, she placed her hand on his arm and he didn't move it away. He held it, not casually, not accidentally, intimately. Through the window, I watched my marriage shatter without a single sound. But the worst part was not the touching, not the flirting, not even the betrayal. It was what came next. Raghav reached into his bag and took out a brown envelope. He pushed it across the table. Sanjana opened it and her face lit up with a satisfaction that made my stomach twist. I zoomed in with my phone camera. My breath stopped. Inside were property transfer documents. Documents I had never seen. Documents with my forged signature. Documents that would legally make Sanjana the partial owner of the apartment. I once called home. My vision blurred. My heart thudded hard enough to choke me. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was a planned replacement, executed with paperwork and precision. Like some cold business deal. After an hour, they left hand in hand. He opened the door for her. She touched his cheek. He kissed the top of her head. And I, sitting inside an auto with a cracked phone in my hands, realized something devastating. My marriage had ended long before this day. I just hadn't been told. When Raghav came home that evening, he dropped his keys carelessly and said, "Long day. Clients are exhausting." I looked at the man in front of me. This man who lied without blinking. And for the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt something colder, sharper, resolve. I smiled back at him as if I were the same naive wife. But inside me, a switch had flipped. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to collect evidence. I was going to document every lie. I was going to let him bury himself. Because the day you realize your husband doesn't love you is painful. But the day you realize he doesn't even fear losing you, that is the day you stop fearing him. Before we move on, comment below. Have you ever discovered the truth in silence? Without a fight, without a word. Just by watching someone show you who they really are, your truth may help another woman recognize hers. The morning after I followed Raghav, I woke up with a strange kind of clarity. The kind that arrives only after you've seen the full, ugly truth. He left home humming to himself, glowing in a happiness I now knew was borrowed from another woman. But that day, I wasn't the same Anika who once cried quietly into the kitchen sink. I waited exactly 15 minutes after he left, before walking straight into his study. The one room in the house he always kept locked, as if it protected the crown jewels. Except the real treasure inside was the truth. And he never imagined I would come looking. The key was hidden beneath a stack of magazines. Typical Raghav, careless with everything except his lies. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled of cologne and paper, a sterile kind of neatness that felt nothing like a home and everything like a hiding place. His desk was arranged too perfectly, files standing like soldiers, papers lined up corner to corner, drawer handles gleaming as though polished. I started with the bottom drawer, the one people hide things in because they believe no one will look there. And I found it, a red folder labeled Financial Private. Inside, my breath caught. Property papers, loan agreements, credit card bills loaded with expenses from restaurants I had never heard of, luxury purchases worth half a year of my allowance, hotel reservations in Udaipur under a fake business trip. Every page was a betrayal, printed in black ink. Then the real bomb, a bank statement from an account I didn't know existed. Multiple accounts, in fact, 3 of them, all under his name alone, huge withdrawals, massive deposits, suspicious transfers to a name I didn't recognize at first glance. Then I saw it, S. Kapoor, Sanjana's surname. He wasn't just cheating emotionally. He was financing a second life. But the darkest part was still waiting for me in the next drawer. A file of scanned signatures. My signatures copied, traced, perfectly replicated. I felt sick. These weren't just practice sheets. These were templates. The same ones he used to sign. The property transfer papers I saw at the café. It wasn't clumsy infidelity. It was strategic fraud. And I had walked right into the heart of it. In that moment, I realized something painful and powerful. Raghav never saw me as his wife. He saw me as a placeholder, a legal pawn, a name he could use until he no longer needed it. The betrayal burned through me, but so did something else, a fire I had never felt before. I wasn't going to let this man rewrite my life story, not without a fight. Before we move on, tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered something someone tried desperately to hide from you? How did you react in that moment? Your story might give another woman the courage to stop pretending she's not seeing the red flags. I had barely processed the forged signatures when my phone buzzed with a message from Raghav. Running late, don't wait for lunch. A simple text, so normal, so routine. Yet now, it felt like a taunt. Because while he was out building a shiny new life with Sanjana, I was standing inside the skeleton of the marriage I once believed in. But this time, I didn't cry. This time, I gathered every document, snapped photos, organized them in a folder on my phone, labeled Truth. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the truth. I was armed with it. That evening, after making sure Raghav had no reason to suspect anything, I called the only person I could trust, my college friend, Priya. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years, thanks to Raghav's slow tightening of my world's borders. She answered on the second ring. Anika? Oh my God, it's really you? Are you okay? No, I whispered, my voice breaking. And I need your help. We met at a small cafe, far from my neighborhood. A place Raghav would never step into because it didn't have valet parking or overpriced lattes. When Priya saw me, her smile vanished. Tell me everything, she said. And I did. All of it. The affair, the hotel receipts, the forged signatures, the secret accounts. By the time I finished, Priya was gripping the table so tightly, her knuckles had turned white. Anika, this isn't just cheating. This is fraud, forgery, asset theft, criminal intent. I swallowed hard. Are you sure? Anika, she said slowly. Your husband is setting you up to lose everything, including legal rights, over your own name. He's preparing to throw you out with nothing. The world around me tilted. The clinking cups, the low chatter, the scent of roasting coffee, everything blurred into background noise. Then what do I do? My voice was barely audible. Priya leaned forward. You need a lawyer. A strong one. Someone who can protect you before Raghav makes his final move. I can't afford a lawyer, I whispered. Priya reached across the table and took my hands. You don't have to afford one. I know someone, a women's rights attorney, who takes cases like yours. Even when the client can't pay upfront. Hope flickered in my chest. Small, trembling, but alive. Anika, she continued, you have to fight back now. If you wait until he files anything, you'll already be trapped. Fight back. The words echoed inside me like a heartbeat. Before moving to the next part, tell me honestly, if you discovered your spouse was planning to erase you legally, what would be your first step? Comment below. Your insight might help another woman who feels trapped right now. Priya's words kept echoing in my head. As I rode back home that evening, he's preparing to erase you, Anika. If you don't fight now, you'll disappear on paper. Long before you disappear from the house. Erase me. The thought alone tore something inside me. Something that had stayed soft and obedient for years. By the time I entered the house, a decision had already formed inside my bones. This was no longer a marriage. This was a battlefield, and I was done surrendering. But Raghav was already home. That almost never happened. He stood by the dining table, scrolling on his phone, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. The kind of smile men wear when they're texting someone who isn't their wife. Hi, you're early, I said. He slipped his phone into his pocket a little too fast. Meeting got cancelled, he answered casually. How was your day? Oh, the irony. The man who had been forging my signature and transferring property out of my name was asking me about my day like we were a normal, functioning couple. It was fine, I said. My voice held steady, smooth, normal. Years of being trained to hide my feelings had finally become my armor. But my heart hammered as I noticed. The cuff of his shirt, lipstick, a faint coral smudge. Not mine, never mine. And suddenly, every lie he'd ever told me aligned like stars forming a constellation. The late nights, the business trips, the missing money, the forged signatures, the hotel receipts, the restaurant bills, the shadow of Sanjana everywhere. It was all the same story, told in different scenes. I forced myself to stand still as he walked past me and placed his briefcase on the sofa. Dinner ready? He asked, as if I were his maid instead of the woman he had vowed to love. It will be, I replied. Even, calm, a voice I barely recognized as mine. He didn't know I had been in his study. He didn't know I knew about the secret accounts. He didn't know I had photos of the forged papers. He didn't know I had spoken to a lawyer. He didn't know that the woman standing before him was no longer afraid. He sat on the sofa scrolling his phone again, probably Sanjana sending him another heart emoji and pretending she wasn't trying to steal another woman's life. I turned away before my rage got the best of me. Later that night, long after he was asleep beside me, I lay awake in the dark with my phone resting on my chest. Priya's lawyer contact was just one message away. Just one text could change the rest of my life. I whispered into the darkness, "I choose me this time." Then I typed the message. "Hello, ma'am. My name is Anika Mehra. I believe my husband is committing fraud and attempting to steal my legal identity. I need help." And I hit send. Before moving on, tell me in the comments, have you ever reached a point where you finally chose yourself? After years of choosing others, your moment might inspire someone who hasn't found her courage yet. The morning of the hearing, Delhi felt colder than usual, the kind of cold that settles in your bones when you know your entire life is about to shift in one direction or another. I arrived early with my lawyer, Advocate Meera Bansal, a sharp-eyed woman whose presence alone could silence a room. "Remember, Anika," she whispered, "truth doesn't tremble. People do." Raghav entered the courtroom with that same arrogance I had once mistaken for confidence, his hair perfectly styled, his watch gleaming, his expression smug, as if he were attending a business meeting he already knew he would dominate. Behind him, Sanjana sat dressed in a pale pink suit, pretending to look supportive, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her fear. They still believed this hearing was about divorce. They had no idea it was about exposure. When my name was called, I walked to the witness stand with the calm of a woman who had already lost everything and therefore had nothing left to fear. Raghav smirked at me as if mocking my courage. But when Meera placed the first exhibit on the judge's table, the smirk faded. A scanned signature, my signature, perfectly forged. The judge frowned. Raghav shifted in his chair. But that was only the beginning. Next came the hotel bills, the secret bank accounts, the property transfer drafts, the WhatsApp chats recovered from his deleted cloud backup. Every lie he thought he buried, laid out like evidence in a murder trial. With every page the judge turned, Raghav sat lower, breathing heavier, sweat collecting at his temples. Sanjana's face drained of color when she saw her own name on financial transactions she had pretended not to know about. The judge finally looked up, eyes sharp as glass. "Mr. Mehra," she said quietly, "are you aware that forging your wife's identity is a criminal offense under Section 463 and punishable with imprisonment?" The silence that followed was the kind that makes hearts stop. Raghav stammered. His lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge raised her hand. "Do not speak. I have seen enough." She turned to me. "Mrs. Mehra, you have provided substantial evidence of fraud, coercion, identity forgery, and intentional economic abuse. You did the right thing, coming forward." My throat tightened. For the first time, someone in authority was acknowledging my suffering. Then came the words that shattered Raghav. "This court orders an immediate criminal investigation into Mr. Mehra's actions and grants full protective measures to Mrs. Mehra." Raghav shot to his feet. "Anika, you think you won? You think they'll believe you over me?" But the judge's voice cut him in half. "This is not about belief. This is about proof. And she has all of it." Security escorted him back into his seat. As he glared at me, like I had personally ended his world. Maybe I had. Maybe that was exactly what he deserved. And yet, standing there, I didn't feel vengeful. I felt powerful. Finally, undeniably powerful. Before we move to the final conclusion, Tell me below, have you ever stood up to someone who thought you'd stay silent forever? Your strength might be the spark someone else desperately needs. When the courtroom doors finally closed behind me, I felt the Delhi air differently. Lighter, cleaner, almost new. Raghav was no longer the center of my world. He was simply a chapter I had survived. Sanjana vanished from his life. The moment the investigation began, his lies collapsed. His empire collapsed. His arrogance collapsed. But I rose. I rebuilt myself piece by piece. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's shadow, but as a woman who chose herself after years of choosing everyone else. If you are listening right now and you feel trapped, silenced, or made small by someone you once trusted, I want you to remember this. The moment you decide you deserve better, your entire life begins to shift. If you're still here, comment, I choose myself. Because sometimes that simple choice is the beginning of freedom.